It's been a month since Russia launched its fully fledged invasion on Ukraine, and there is no sign of a ceasefire. Western leaders are meeting in Brussels for an extraordinary NATO summit to discuss tougher action against Moscow. Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelenskyy has called on the alliance to take serious steps to help Kyiv. NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg has described the invasion as the most serious security crisis in a generation. And he says NATO is determined to impose more costs on Russia to bring an end to the war.
President Putin has made a big mistake, and that is to launch a war, to wage war against an independent sovereign nation. He has underestimated the strength of the Ukrainian people, the bravery of the Ukrainian people and the armed forces, and therefore they are also meeting much more resistance than they expected.
Live to Lviv and Latvia in a moment. First, a look at the deteriorating situation on the ground in Ukraine.
1 month on and the fighting continues. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has called on people around the world to protest against Russia's war.
Come from your offices, your homes, your schools and universities. Come in the name of peace. Come with Ukrainian symbols to support Ukraine, to support freedom, to support life. Come to your squares, your streets. Make yourselves visible and heard. Say that people matter, freedom matters, peace matters, Ukraine matters. From March 24th, in downtowns of your cities, all as one together who want to stop the war.
More than 10 million Ukrainians have fled their homes since the start of the invasion, as Russian forces keep up their barrage of attacks. In the worst-hit city of Mariupol, hundreds of thousands are still sheltering from constant shelling. Bombs also continue to fall on Kyiv, Chernihiv and Kharkiv. Ukrainian forces have launched counterattacks in a bid to recapture lost territory. Reports say they have gained ground near the capital Kyiv, taking back the cities of Makariv and Irpin after weeks of fighting.
From official sources we receive information. Right now the small city Makariv and almost whole Irpin already in the control is Ukrainian soldier.
Fierce resistance from Ukrainian troops have slowed Russia's assault. It's estimated that as many as 15,000 Russian soldiers have died so far, and more than 30,000 have been wounded. Experts say Moscow has been forced to turn to long-range bombardment to break Ukraine's resolve. British intelligence believe Russia is mobilizing reservists and conscript manpower, as well as private military companies and foreign mercenaries to replace their fallen troops.
Kieran McElligott joins us live now from Lviv in western Ukraine. Kieran, Russian forces appear to have retreated a few kilometers outside of Kyiv after some intense battles with Ukrainian forces.
You can imagine the shock to which the Ukrainian people and indeed the rest of the world woke up to when this invasion started 1 month ago. Russian forces coming into the country, the largest land incursion in Europe since the Second World War. And the plan behind that, the Kremlin's plan, was to quickly surround Kiev, decapitate it, as it were, and install a puppet government. And here we are 1 month later with, just as you say, this pushback by Ukrainian forces. We just heard in your package there about the suburb of Kyiv, 50 kilometers to the west of the capital, Kyiv. The Ukrainians said that they retook that yesterday. You also mentioned Irpin on the Facebook page of Ukraine's police force and Irpin's local police force. They said they were resuming normal duties. This all gives a sense that this pushback is complete. And some amazing footage that we've just seen, if it's verifiable, the Associated Press cannot verify it, but a huge fireball over a ship that is docked in the port of Berdansk in the Sea of Azov. It's called the Orsk. It's one of 10 large Navy ships which were deployed by the Russian Navy to great fanfare on Monday, which docked in that port. It's a transporter type ship. It can have 20 tanks. It can house 40 APCs or up to 400 Marines. So that quick decapitation strategy obviously is not working. And here we are a month later with the Ukrainian pushback looking very strong.
And all the while, Kieran, getting people to safety has been paramount. We've got more humanitarian corridors today. How quickly are these evacuations progressing, though?
Well, we have another 7 humanitarian corridors which have opened up today. This is according to the Facebook page of Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister. Her name is Irina Vereshchuk. 7 humanitarian corridors yesterday. Of course, earlier in the week, some of these humanitarian corridors were fired upon. Some children were injured. We are trying to see, the Ukrainians are trying to funnel these refugees and these displaced people towards the city that I'm in, Lviv in Western Ukraine. It's relatively calm here. These refugees can come up to this part of the country and they can regroup. But the statistic that you just mentioned there, 10 million people internally or externally displaced. That's 1 in 4 of the population of Ukraine.
Kieran, thank you for that update. Kieran McElligott there in Lviv.
And now to Giles Gibson in Riga in Latvia. Giles, the Kremlin says NATO states are suffering from an hysterical and inadequate understanding of what is going on in Ukraine. Have they got it wrong?
Well, the message that the Kremlin are trying to send out really is that these NATO leaders who are gathering as we speak in the Belgian capital, Brussels, are overreacting to this, that this has never been an invasion. This is not an attempt to occupy Ukraine. This is simply a special military operation, as we keep hearing from Vladimir Putin and his top officials. I think it's very interesting to see that on the TASS state news agency in Russia, they are leading with some comments that Jens Stoltenberg, the NATO Secretary General, made about NATO's plans in terms of Ukraine itself, saying that there are no plans to put NATO boots on the ground inside the country, and really repeating once again that there are no plans to establish a no-fly zone in the skies over Ukraine. But also there is no mention of the fact that NATO are also really just beefing up their eastern frontier with Russia. We have these plans to send these new battle groups into Bulgaria, Hungary, Romania and Slovakia. And the Baltic states, including Latvia, where I am, are also saying that there needs to be a permanent presence here in this region to deter Russian aggression, to deter potential Russian aggression.
Oh, Giles, the EU's top diplomat Josep Borrell saying Russia has no interest in any kind of ceasefire because its army has yet to achieve its goals. Where are we on those peace talks between Kyiv and Moscow?
We've just had very little information coming out of either side, really, either from the Ukrainians or the Russians in the last 24 hours or so. We heard from Volodymyr Zelenskyy, the Ukrainian president, on Wednesday, saying that these talks had been confrontational at times, but that they are moving forward. The last time we really got any significant comments from the Kremlin spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, about the progress of the talks was Tuesday, so a couple of days ago. He said then that he wanted these talks to be more active and substantive, and that they were not going to make their detailed demands public. They were not basically going to put their cards on the table in terms of what they wanted in order to make a deal with the Ukrainian side. I think worth noting, though, that the head of the International Committee of the Red Cross is currently in Moscow for a couple of days of meetings with senior Russian officials. He has just in the last couple of hours met with the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, basically saying that the Red Cross is a neutral party, that it is just trying to make sure that Russia and Ukraine alleviates the suffering of civilians who are trapped between the two militaries, who are trapped inside Ukraine, and also offering to facilitate dialogue between the two sides. So really not a lot of updates coming in the last 24 hours, but we are hearing that these talks are still ongoing at least.
Oh, thanks for that, Giles. Giles Gibson in Riga, Latvia. We'll take a closer look at NATO's plans with our correspondent in Brussels and with a guest later on this bulletin.